Halito, and welcome to Native ChocTalk, a podcast by natives for all. Here we're keeping our Native ancestors' stories and history alive, while also sharing with you our Native culture, traditions, and more. I'm Rachel Youngman, a Choctaw originally from Anadarko, Oklahoma. I hope you'll enjoy this journey with me as we learn from our Native American guests. And I hope you'll do me a favor. Feel free to like and share these episodes. I so appreciate it. Yakoki.
This isn't just a job for me. This is something that I can do to help other kids that were from small towns like me get out in the world and experience different things.
See and share our stories at togetherwe'remore.com.
You're listening to part 2 of this series.
So we were talking about Howe and Heavener, and you mentioned that Heavener had just a few buildings downtown. So Howe was the bigger of the two
Other
towns,
way
you
around.
think? Other way around. Okay.
Yeah.
Haven was the larger, and that's where I remember going into town on Saturdays. And you got to go to a movie, and you know how movies were then. They showed a cartoon, and then they had something called a serial. They would show you maybe 10 minutes of a little show, and then the next week another 10 minutes, et cetera, et cetera.
Did not know
And
that.
when I was going there, the short subject at the front was about Nyoka, Queen of the Jungle. And that was my first love, Nyoka. She swung through
Nyoka.
a little outfit made out of a piece of leather. Nyoka, Queen of the Jungle.
Oh, there you go.
And then
That's so cool.
the women, the shopping, there's I think, are you going to send her a book?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a book of mine. There's stories of Joe Boy. And there's stories that I've downloaded for my granddaughter who had them cleaned up.
Yeah.
One is called The Yellow Pencil. And we went downtown, obviously, to the grocery shop, and I came across this yellow pencil. So I just tucked it away. And when I got outside, I was kind of proud of myself. When we got outside, I showed it to my grandma, and I said, "Grandma, look what I got."
Stole a pencil. Oh, there happens to be a pencil right in front of you.
She was not proud, as I had supposed.
No.
You go right back in there, young man, and you tell, and she called him Mr. Storeman. You tell Mr. Storeman what you did, and you just tell him that he can administer whatever kind of punishment he's, not in those big words, but
Yeah.
So I went back in and I found him and I held the pencil up, and I know he was trying to keep from laughing, but I said, "Mom, I took this pencil," and he said, "Well, now he's really gruff. Now you shouldn't be doing that, young man. Don't let that happen again. I'm going to let it go this time." But anyway, called the yellow
What a
pencil.
great story. So when you were in that shop getting the little pencil, do you remember what it looked like in there? Can you describe it?
Wooden floors, we didn't, the wooden floors, and that's about all, you're little, so you see what's down low. I don't recall what else was in there. Probably candy. No, I'm going to have to say no. The only memory I have is holding that yellow pencil up and said,
You'll never forget that.
That's stuck here.
So you talked earlier about how there were still horses and buggies in that time frame. So did you ever like hitch up a wagon or ride horses to town or anything like that? Or were y'all in an automobile?
I rode in the wagons, but I was too little to. The only thing that we had that I remember about horses was they had a storm there, some lightning, and it was starting to drizzle a little bit, and they sent me and another kid down. You go down and get the horses and bring them back up to the barn, and don't you ride those horses, you lead them.
Mm.
What? You tell a kid don't ride the horse?
Right. They probably should have told you why, because it would have bucked you off if the lightning struck.
They didn't, and they did. But they were wet. They were wet, so we were heading back to the barn, and when they made this turn, I think God has a sense of humor. We
Yes.
slid off and we slid right into a blackberry bush. Okay, so we come back all scuffed up, and they're the men. I suppose they were probably grinning from ear to ear. You boys didn't ride it? Oh
Oh
No, no.
no, no, no. We did not get on those horses.
no.
It's too funny.
He has
Typical.
he has another funny story about the first time that he saw a moving picture,
Oh
and
yes,
it
tell us.
Oh, they
Oh, go
showed
ahead.
that in How.
yes, it might have been in the music hall. There's a hall there called the music hall because there was a family with the last name of Music, and
Oh,
yeah, and there was a hall there. So I'm guessing. I mean, that's a guess, but it's probably highly likely that that's where they showed the movie. But he has a funny. Go ahead and tell him about that.
Yeah, they came in and set up the projector and everything, and the film. You may have never have experienced, but old movies used to they used to have two projectors.
okay.
Excuse me, and because the celluloid film would break, and they would just crank the other one up, but this one kept breaking.
Hmm.
But in the middle of the film, you know how they love to put the camera down low and have the horses come riding toward the camera.
Yeah.
Well, they showed a scene like that, and this little buddy that I was with, this is our first ever movie, unheard of kind of. He grabbed me and tried to pull me behind the seats. He said, "They're going to run over us. We're going to die." He actually thought they were and they show it,
That's so
I
cute.
can see it. But
I love
one of the
this.
old gentlemen got up and started out, and they said, Fred, it's not over yet." And he said, "Ah," he went on out.
Now,
I'm done.
now, what was that boy's name? Do you remember?
Bobby Wayne Ford,
Bobby Wayne Ford. We heard that he lived in Howe for his lifetime and was
the doctor.
yeah, he became a doctor.
You
So
became
he
a
took over
doctor.
for doctor. Must have taken over for Doctor
It's
Dean.
probably so.
Yeah, there's only been two doctors in your lifetime there.
Yeah. Anyway,
Wow.
I
Oh,
thought
how
that was such a
sweet.
cute story, especially because when you think of how far we've come, I mean, we have
Yes.
virtual reality now. People can put on glasses and feel like they're inside a movie, and
Oh, yeah.
but that's how that kid felt about it when it happened. The first movie he saw, he thought those horses
Right?
were going to come right down off the screen and trample him.
That's so cute.
They,
Now, I mean, you said that your first picture show was there in Howell, Oklahoma. So what did
uh
you think your very first time to see that? Do you remember?
my my personality is probably I was frustrated because the film kept
Yeah.
breaking. But no, honestly, I can't say it was something new. It was exciting, but
Yeah.
I don't even remember. And of course, that was early movies.
Yeah.
Um, so they're trying to be dramatic, and I don't know what they were showing. I remember that scene, and that's about all.
Yeah.
What?
I
Why don't you tell them about the when you went to the movies that really late night and got out really late after it was dark? And
Well, this isn't in the book, but this is kind of an interesting story. Fascinating, really. I went to I had maybe moved to Tulsa then and was back for summer to live with my grandmother. But I walked into town into Heavener, and the road that you had to walk went down through a little gully and what we called a thicket. There was a lot of old growth over it. In other words, it was like a tunnel almost, and and the Heavener Cemetery was right beside there. But I went
Mhm.
downtown and I watched some kind of a scary movie.
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein probably, and I'm walking home, and you had to go down a dirt road, and there was no moon in it. It was absolutely pitch black. You could barely make out where the dirt road was at.
yeah.
So I'm tramping down that road, and we had this young bull. His whole thing was to get out of the pasture and amble down the road. So I was on a bicycle. I
Oh,
was on my bicycle. So I'm trying to see, the road in front of me so I don't run into the ditch. And I know I see something, and he was totally black. The bull was black. And I know there's something in front of me. but it is so dark and no moon, I can't make it out. So I stop the bike and I'm standing, how you stand astride of a bicycle. And
Right.
I have leaned across the handlebars and I'm trying to see. Well, he's trying to figure out what I am too. He's right in front of me and he is stretching his head out and he sniffs, snores right in my face. And that when talk about now, you can be scared, and I never was very scary, but startled. I mean, that was the shock of a lifetime because he blew blew snot on me when he snorted, and he jumped because he know what I am. And then we
Oh my
both
gosh.
we both realized immediately what
After
who we are.
no snoring.
And I can't ride my bicycle. I get off of it and I'm like, come on. So we go trudging on back and he's behind me. And if he could have spoken, he would have, well, that was really scary. But he tramps behind me and I put him back in the pasture.
Get back in
So,
there, bull.
yeah.
So
It had to
funny.
have been dark out there too in the country at
Oh,
night.
there's no light,
There's no light.
Well,
and dark of the moon, there was no moon.
well, I think too, like back in a time when people like lived with their livestock, because grandma had little cows, little 1 gallon milk cows and
Yeah.
chickens, and you had a relationship with all of them,
Hmm.
and
So true.
What was that you said about the chicken? You're a chicken this morning and
oh yeah, you could have a pet chicken and you could eat a chicken all in the same day.
All in the same day.
All the same, maybe the same chicken. Oh, my dad has a good chicken story too. Tell about when you
Yeah, let's hear
murdered
it.
the chicken.
Oh, well, that's in the book.
Oh, yeah, it's in the book, but you can tell it anyway. Then maybe somebody buy the book.
Yeah.
Well, I had been to the city, so I'm back for summer. I'm visiting, and I was probably under my grandmother's feet because she never said anything. She said, "Honey, why don't you go out and get those chickens out of the front yard?" And the chickens are always in the front yard. So I went out there. Well, I have my trusty BB gun. So I thought, well, I'll just pop this little chicken, because they're thick wings. You're not going to hurt them with a BB. It was a Daisy Red Ryder BB gun. And
Ooh.
so I hit this chicken right in the head and killed it.
Oops,
So I'm like, oh
whoops.
man. So
Fry that
the
baby
book
up.
in the book is really, really, you got to read the story in the book to get the whole thing. I knew what to do because I was jaded. I had been to the city.
That's
I
right.
had seen
Oh.
movies. I knew about gangsters and what is it, corpus delicti, etc. So I take chicken and I haul him down to a pond that we had down there, and I wrap the wire around his neck and put a rock on it, and I toss him out in the creek, out in the pond.
Hide the evidence.
If there's no body, there's no
Leave no
murder.
body.
No body, no murder.
Oh, and now
Right.
at 90 years old, you are confessing your sins
Well,
in the
and
book.
then I write in the book that I had dreams. What was it? It's better in the book, but I talk about the chicken in my dream rising in the water and coming out. And anyway, yeah.
Did your grandma figure out that her chicken was gone? One of her
Oh, I'm
chickens?
sure. Yeah, she knew the chickens. She fed them every day, and I'm sure she knew one was gone. But the snakes would get them every once in a while.
Yeah.
They were out in the pasture, and sometimes a snake would. But oh, if I'd have just said Grandma had killed a chicken, we would have had chicken dinner that night.
Yeah, like you didn't have to throw it out.
But I didn't. When I tied that in with confess your sins and stuff like that. I might mention that I'm a Christian. I believe in God and believe in the God of the Bible,
Same.
and therefore I believe in heaven. So I think that's pretty sure that's where I'm headed.
Absolutely.
So my 90th birthday, It is absolutely, Rachel, it was beautiful. Where
Aw.
we went, and the lady, the daughter there is a concert pianist. She sat
Oh.
down and began to play the piano. My kids began to get up and dance with each one with their spouses. I just went over and sat by Jen and listened to that. Just a magnificent uh, 90th birthday at this place that we love to go. I went back to my room. I crawled in my bed and I go to sleep. And all of a sudden, there is like an explosion in the room. Boom, boom, boom. And I jump out of bed and what was that? So I go to all the windows and I look to see if something fell off of because the trees fall up there all the time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I'm looking and I can't find anything. And I go over, and when you go in the room, there's a closet with folding doors. And
Hmm.
inside the closet, they have a little mini fridge. So I opened those closet doors, and my granddaughter, who was up there, drank some kind of a CO2 drink, and she had put one in that refrigerator, and somebody had put it down so cold that it froze and it exploded. Well, when it blew up, there's not enough room between the door to the fridge and the folding doors when they're closed. So the fridge blows open, the door hits the
Oh.
wooden door, bam, bang, boom. So there's three explosions. And so
So you're saying
that
take
was
cover.
happy birthday. You made it to 90. Maybe we can scare you out of 91. But so
But I thought, we talked about the skills. The thing that I thought was interesting about that when he told me the story the next day was it made me think of a story from his childhood when he was in Tulsa. So he's in Tulsa. It all sounds normal to him, but he was probably about 8 years old, and his mom worked the night shift. So he was in a garage apartment by himself. He had to
Oh
get
man.
himself up and ready for school. He had to feed himself. I mean,
Right.
he had to learn to be very brave. And he lived
Yeah.
in with his grandma in a small town, and all of a sudden he's in Tulsa by
That's a good
himself.
point.
So he
That's a good
tells these
point.
stories, and you have to like get the context. He's 8 years old and on his own. So, he one night he's in bed and he's in this apartment, and there's like a closet in the back that has a window in it and makes shadows in there. And he's
Hmm.
scared. You know how it is when you're a kid, you think there's a monster under the bed.
Yeah,
He
totally. And he's only
logic.
8.
Yeah. And he used this logic the way he still does now, the way he did, trying to figure out what the kaboom was. And
Mm-hmm.
so he went over, he made himself go into that closet. Can you imagine that? And reach around to convince himself that there was nobody in that closet.
Oh my
I can
Oh,
gosh.
still remember touching each garment that was in there as I went down that
yeah.
closet. There wasn't a lot
Oh
of them.
my
We didn't have many
gosh.
clothes.
Yeah, because they
You
was
were so
making a
little.
shadow, making it look like there was a person in the closet. And and that was just one of the stories of him being alone in Tulsa. And so just for kids now to think of what it was really like and how independent you had to be. I mean,
Oh
he was a
my goodness.
latchkey. He was what we call a
I
latchkey
was the
kid.
original latchkey
And
kid.
I'm sure there were plenty of them. And when the moms went to work in the war effort for that 6 years, it's
Mm.
probably a lot of kids
Yeah.
really, really on their own. And then another thing that he did when he was in Tulsa was he got on the bus with his buddies and went out to the fair. And he was out there playing, and he had a little bit of money for bus fare back. But you know what else you can buy with bus fare money?
Ice cream,
Ice cream,
Uh,
cotton,
cotton
cotton
candy,
candy.
corn dogs.
oh, so you had money to get back, but you got tempted by the sweets.
Yes. And so he didn't have money to get back. I can't believe his buddy got on the bus and left him there.
Oh,
See you
He
later.
was
I
a
gotta
good
go
friend.
home.
So he had to make it from the fairgrounds all the way back to his house. And
Oh
there's
my
what he did.
gosh.
Imagine you're 8 years old And you're like, how am I going to get home? Well, he knew his house was near the Methodist church, which has a huge, tall steeple. And so he just dead reckoned towards that steeple. And he walked miles. I mean, how many
Yeah,
miles do you think he
I
walked?
have no idea. A lot of miles. But you know, you're
Wow.
young and you used to walk in those mountains. But I thought, okay, there's that Method Methodist church. You know, I know my house is right in there. So I just kept focused on that,
He
and I
just
just
kept
kept
going
moving
towards the
towards
Methodist
that.
church.
Were you scared?
Well, of course not.
Of
Where
course
are you?
not.
A Choctaw? Scared?
Don't be scared.
Yeah,
Right.
maybe a little bit, Rich.
He lived in this little garage apartment. They found a place to live in up above the garage, and he was living there with his mom. And so when later I went to Tulsa, and he gave me directions for the different places, right? And he said
Right.
he was trying to give me an experience of what it was like to be a little 8-year-old boy from a tiny town. I mean, Heaver
Right.
was a big town. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe once in a while they went to Poto, which was bigger. But I went there and he's like, oh, this is the church and it's on this street. And when I found it, it was like this huge cathedral. I mean, I could see why you could see it from the fairgrounds. It was, and he said that it was big enough that there was like a bowling alley with 2 lanes inside the church. It was
Oh, wow.
absolutely stunning. I mean, Tulsa's a gorgeous city. And so
Yes.
I like tracked around from his directions where he lived when he was 8.
Oh,
And
how neat.
it
Did you
was
get
so
photos?
yeah, it was I don't know where they are now, but it was so it was just so interesting to imagine. And also to imagine
That's so neat.
my grandmother, being a young mom with a little kid, in a tiny town and moving to Tulsa and making her own money. And
Now,
I
why
tell
did
you,
she move there?
to work in the
That's
war.
all. Look, all the women were, the men were gone. That's World War II, and the men were all in the army. My dad was in the army. On the maternal side, both my uncles were in the army. So the men were gone, and the women just took over the welding jobs in the shipyards.
Wow.
And they had a large aircraft plant there building fighter planes
In Tulsa.
in Tulsa. So there was an influx of jobs there.
Where did she work? McDonnell
McDonnell
Douglas.
Douglas, I think.
That's where Emily worked. And the thing is, she
Wow.
never had any more kids, and she always worked.
Huh.
And she's a very interesting woman, kind of hard to figure, and well, not real maternal.
That's what I was going to say. Not real maternal.
Dad said that
Not
was
real maternal,
generous.
huh?
She wasn't real maternal. As a matter of fact, she didn't even feed him when he was there. She just gave him money to feed himself, and he was eating only ice
Hmm.
cream for
Oh,
dinner.
oh.
And she found out about it.
Good.
I bet it was good.
She didn't even know what grade I was supposed to
Yeah,
be in when they moved me up there.
yeah.
And I think that might have been
Oh.
where they wanted the birth certificate because she put me in the
The wrong
wrong
grade.
Yeah.
grade. And they might have looked,
Oh my
teachers
gosh.
were good, then they might have looked, this kid doesn't look old enough to be in here.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah,
that's where
okay, so that's really sad. So were you living with Pearl and then moved to Tulsa with your mom?
correct,
So
Yeah.
you
correct. And
went
then
from having your grandma, who was obviously a
very
wonderful
maternal.
grandmother
Yeah,
and
yeah,
very maternal,
yeah.
to that
Yes,
Yeah.
pretty austere, sterile, I guess.
Yeah.
sterile. Now,
Yeah.
why did she take you away from your grandmother? It sounds
Well,
like,
this is pure speculation again, but when
oh,
you're in the military and you have a dependent, you can get money for that dependent.
gotcha.
So follow the money.
Yeah,
Probably, she wanted the money.
yeah.
And we also, his aunt Helen, who was
Mm.
also very nurturing, but never was able to have her own children, and really loved my dad a lot. She was also living in Tulsa, working as a
Okay.
waitress. So there was a couple family members there. So
That makes
I always
sense.
thought that it was either that they got more money, which is probably true, and also they might have wanted to, have her taking care of her own child, like to
Yeah.
try and see if they could domesticate her, but it didn't work.
That's kind of a risky experiment too.
Yeah, yeah, but she always loved to
Oh,
work, and she worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, she worked the rest of her
yeah.
life, so she liked being a working woman. So
Yeah. So sounds like you got to go back to Howe and Heavener and all that during the summers or certain times, right? So you still got to see your family?
Correct. They were. I'm sure that every summer they could hardly wait to get rid of me. No, they would send me back down there, and that's where I was at when the war was over. My dad was out of the army, and he came to Bakersfield first, and then he sent for Emily, and Emily went, and I stayed there for a period of time. I don't know, maybe a couple of months or so. I'm not, and it might have been school years.
oh yeah, that makes sense. He probably finished out the school
Yeah, I
year
bet I
then.
finished the school
Yeah.
year, and then my Aunt Helen, who was my favorite aunt, she we rode it wasn't a Greyhound, it was
Trailways,
Santa Fe Trailways
trailways. I
Trailways
think that's what
bus.
it
You remember the Trailways buses? There was a
I
line
don't.
that were like Greyhound, but Santa
Okay.
Fe Trail. Anyway, we rode that rode a bus out here to California,
California.
and they had really built up California. And of course, everybody, loved California back in those days. And there was all this Hollywood, etc., the ocean and everything. And the first place that we stopped was in Needles, California. Have you been to Needles?
No.
Don't go.
It's an ugly place.
You're
Hot.
like,
I
this
think it
is
was.
not what I think of California.
I'm like, I've been lied to.
I've been lied to. This is California. Uh, yeah, so that's when he came out to California, and a lot of people, I guess, came out after the war, and his mom and dad brought him out here, and I'm real glad because otherwise I wouldn't exist. Went into was it seventh grade? Probably seventh grade at Emerson Junior High, and that's where he met my mom.
Both sides of the family moved to California, kind of
Hmm.
all at the same time.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Um,
opportunity after the war.
a lot of
And
them.
was the Choctaw clan already formed out
No,
there?
No,
no,
that's
that was much later. That was in the 90s.
Okay.
Yeah. But there were other Choctaws out here. And his dad, when his dad came out, he worked at a meat packing plant
mhm.
and worked on the refrigeration at a meat packing plant. He just taught himself how to do it. And he,
Oh,
he got that job, and he stayed until my dad graduated from high school. But then he went back because he wanted to be with his brother. I think his brother was probably more like a father to him, the closest thing to a father figure, because their
yeah.
dad died when Uncle Jeff was about 11 years old, I think, and Woody
Hmm.
was 5. So he wanted to be with his brother. So he and Emily left uh, and married, they got divorced, and she married someone else after my dad graduated from high school. Well, after my dad went into the army, excuse me. And so dad was the only one who stayed.
Hmm.
And
They picked up my breadcrumbs, and I couldn't find my way back.
so
So you ask about the inside of that store where the pencil story took place.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you a kind of maybe a Choctaw story that you'd be interested in. This now Jeff was educate. He educated himself. He became a nurse at the Tallahassee Indian Hospital.
And this is your uncle, right?
Would be my uncle. So
Okay.
and she asked the impression of where this took place. The post office was in a store in Howe, because she said that the post offices were really
yeah,
had some
they were
prestige.
more than a post office. They
Yeah.
kind of like
The
functioned also like a bank.
community and
Yeah.
oh,
Okay,
okay.
so I remember this store, and I remember the bars on the little teller window, but I remember a conversation that I guess I overheard. and it was Jeff, but it was about George Washington, who would have been his brother
A
and
cousin.
cousin. And he said he saw George downtown, and George was just emaciated. And he asked him, are you eating? And he says, well, I don't get enough money they just give me a sack of flour and a sack of potatoes.
No.
So the Indian agent was taking his money.
Yep. Yep. And that was in the 1930s.
Yeah. And
In the
Jeff,
30s.
yeah, and Jeff happened to get the story, and of course he immediately rectified the situation, but
He fixed
that's
that.
that's the kind of stuff that was still going on.
It was still going on, and George Washington and his mama died, and Adam had guardianship of him until Adam was murdered, and then
Okay, because I saw that in my research of
right.
your family. I saw that. I wondered who that was. Okay,
He was a
makes sense.
grandson. So Henry Wilkins was his grandfather and had custody of him after his mama died, and then Adam got guardianship of him after Henry died, and so they just obvious, and he was deemed incompetent. So we think that he was mentally infirmed somehow, and so the family just kept taking care of him, but he did have a bad guardian, and we know there were a lot of stories like that.
Oh,
So many, so many. And listeners, by the way, we will hear more about Adam Wilkins in the next episode that we have with just Amy. And he seems like just a wonderful man. I mean, a prominent Choctaw, someone who was highly regarded, and some bad things happened to him. But his legacy truly is that he had really worked hard in his life and had made a name for that family. And that passes on down to you, Woodrow, obviously.
Stay tuned for part 3 of this series.
Thanks for listening to Native ChocTalk. Be sure to join our community on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and check us out at nativechoctalk.com. Stay tuned for the next episode. You're going to love it. Yakoki. Thank you, my friends.